want to point out that there. I want to point out that there. Oops, where'd that go? Here we go again. That there are two different ways of dealing with this. So some teachers use one method and other teachers use another. And that's grand when you know you're around a while, but with the teachers who are coming out on PMEs or just out of PMEs, they're not usually aware. So I will be explicit and point it out. So if we should have had a purchase on creditors for 2,800, and if it was entered on the wrong side of purchases, the wrong figure, and entered on the wrong side of creditors, so it should have been on the credit side, it was entered on the debit. It should have been on the debit as 2.8, it was entered on the credit as 1.8. One method is to fix the account. So put something into the account that will make the wrong account the same as the right account. Okay, so I'm putting a 4.6 on this side to effectively cancel it out and put in 2.8, and I'm putting in a 5.6 on the other to cancel out and put it in, and I'm journalizing that, and I need a suspense. Now the other way of dealing with it, which involves an extra step, and it's a completely different way of dealing with it. And if you look at some of the new marking schemes, both for the SEC and in some of the mock papers, you'll see that the SEC have used this marking scheme a couple of times, and the mock papers sometimes have put in both marking schemes. So in this case, what we do is we simply put in a cancelling out entry. So we cancel out the 1.8 with the 1.8 down to there. We cancel out the 2.8 with the 2.8 down to there. And in the journal, what we do is we write up the cancelling out entries, and then we write in the proper entries. Okay, so it involves an extra line or two being written in here, but it's probably for many people an easier way of doing it. Okay. You'll also notice that in Suspense, I've simply written in 2.8 and 1.8, which is absolutely fine. You don't get penalized or docked any marks for doing that. And there's nothing obviously wrong with finding one figure to replace it. But by writing in the two figures, it does avoid the possibility of somebody finding the one figure to replace it by accidentally putting in a balancing figure. Okay. Now, I've been trying to think of for quite a while why Suspense was so particularly difficult. All right. And what we were asking them to do is to write down the entries that should have been recorded. And then we asked them to write down the entries that actually were recorded. And then we asked them to do the entries to fix that. And then we asked them to write that up in a journal. And we asked them to do that for 5 transactions. And at the end of that, then they have to go and do B, and then part C, and then part D, and finish off with a part E. Okay. And in my opinion, it came down to the difficulties lie here. Okay. So that writing down what should have happened is for many quite a difficult task. Okay. But reading the wording of what actually happened is a second difficult task. And putting in the entries to either eradicate and replace, or the entries to change, is a third difficult task. And writing up the journal isn't necessarily very difficult, but it's new to them, so it has the potential to be a fourth difficult task. And then they have to put in their being omission or being correction, which is not difficult at all, but they get a bit freaked sometimes about the wording. So it's a fifth task. So there's 5 tasks on each of these rows. And then they have to go back and repeat the 5 tasks, and then repeat the 5 tasks and repeat the 5 tasks. Now, when I started off teaching it, I started off with part A. And I think despite A being worth 50% of the marks, I think about 95% of the difficulty of the question occurs in part A. And not even in part A. I think the vast majority of the difficulty in part A is found here. And what they struggle with is, when we start off doing it, it seems to be a never-ending series of, and here's a transaction, and here's another transaction, and here's another transaction, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another. And I've done 5 another's there. How many more of them is there to come? And by the way, we're still not out of part A. And when we're finished part A, you're still going to have to do part B. They don't know, is that going to be easy or hard? Then it'll be C, then it'll be D, then it'll be E. And at some stage, they start giving up on us and we've lost them. Okay. Now, I think we can do it a better way than that. Okay. So the first thing I did was I mightn't be much of an accounting teacher, but I am kind of fairly good at being forensic. So what I did was I printed out all the papers all the way back to 1992, 30 years worth of papers. And I printed them all out on pieces of paper. And I wrote in the year beside every single adjustment, and I got a scissors and I cut them up into tiny little strips. And I went out to the kitchen table on a big sheet of A2 paper and I stacked them into piles and I worked out like with like. And what I came up with was that in 30 years, there's been about 22 corrections or omissions being asked, only about 22. Okay, so if they could do the 22, this question would be pure easy. And then I bundled them, all right, and I gave each a number. So under the standard, fairly straightforward, you know, we did something wrong type of thing, there are 7 of them. Now, I have 105A and 105B. That's 2 that are virtually the same. All right. That was, I think, the 2018 question and the 2012 question. And I think the 2012 question will never be asked again as a consequence. But you can see when you start going through them like that, the pattern emerges fairly quickly and most of them become relatively straightforward. There has been one type of payment. So that is the one where we paid for the repairs to the building and the insurance for the private premises. So you're picking up on the wording in that. The one that I think is interesting, or the 2 that are interesting, are the disposal and the new capital, and they overlap quite a lot. All right, and I want to take a look at something I've done with disposal to try and bring a sense of consistency to it. There are the 2 BD ones where they've brought the BD down on the wrong side, or they've not brought the BD down at all. Okay, in one case, no BD is on an asset account affecting balance sheet, and the other case, it's on an expense account affecting profit. There is the historic transactions, which have to be cancelled out. And these 2 are similar because this is a check we wrote and the owner paid for it in cash. And this is exactly the same, except that this is a check that we wrote that bounced and the owner paid for it out of private resources. And then the last one was the private debt offset against the business debt. And you've got one, which is the private debt that we owed we as an owner owed, and the other one is the private debt that was owed to us. Okay, so I've put something together that deals with these. My handouts now number them with these. So the idea is that we create something that students can work through, and rather than us even just sometimes working through questions, we want them to be able to work through these and be able to tick them off into this is an easy adjustment, this is a middling adjustment, this is a hard adjustment. So if we can take this 20 and we can reduce it down to 3 or 4 adjustments that are still considered difficult, well, you'd pay a price and you'd be willing to put the effort into trying to overcome 3 or 4 difficult adjustments. Okay, and that is the end of that. Okay, so a couple of things here. Excuse me. Let me just bring up. Okay, so this is the folder where the things are shared with you. All right. So the first thing I did was I decided to not start with a part A at all. I decided to start close to the end of part A. Okay, and I have these Word documents created here. So if I open up, doesn't matter. I've given you 1, 2, 3, 4 of them because you don't need more than 4 than that anyway. Okay, so what I've done is this comes on, in this case, it comes on 2 pieces of paper. All right. Actually, I'm just going to try and excuse me for a second while I try and open it in Word instead, because it's meant to be done in Word. Right. Oh, there it is. Wrong screen. Okay, so these are my past questions. This is 2020, higher level. That was question 6. Okay, so sometimes they're 2 page. Yeah, they're all at most 4 pages long. So if you're in a position to photocopy onto A3, they would be ideal because you can give a single sheet to a student. So we've got all of the. We know part A is the difficult part, so we've done the journal for them. All right. Everything is done in light gray, non-relevant text, so they can focus on what's important. What I do is I get them to use, you know me, I love highlighters, and they highlight the figures going down here. So if it ends up in the trading profit and loss, I highlight it in one color. If it ends up in the balance sheet, I highlight it in another color. And we'd be doing this hopefully late enough that they would know that where things should go. Okay, I'll be pushing the idea of EARL, expenses, assets, revenues, liabilities. So they go down through it and they simply have to highlight, so that will get highlighted for the trading profit and loss, that gets highlighted for the balance sheet. I carry it to excess. I know other people don't, and I know other people will do a red circle around things, which is obviously fine too. All right, I'll highlight that in the suspense color. I'll highlight that in, I'm not going to do them all. I'll highlight that in the balance sheet color. That's for the balance sheet. That's for the balance sheet. Okay, that in this case is for the balance sheet. That's for the balance sheet. So most of the stuff is going to the balance sheet. And then I scroll down. When they've done that, when they've highlighted those things, I have a suspense account ready to go. Okay, and all they literally now need to do is to write in the entries from the highlighting above. So all the left things are just simply being dropped in on the left. They're going to be right by just knowing it was going to the suspense. All the things that are highlighted for suspense on the right are simply being dropped in on the right. One thing that I do, and I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the difference between what we get as a marking scheme from the SEC and a solution, is I always put the starting figure in. So if the starting figure is debtors is 66,300, I actually write in balance BD 66,300. And when I do the suspense account, I actually, in the process, find the figure for the correct figure for debtors in this case, as opposed to taking the debtors figure and then trying to decide should I be adding or subtracting the difference onto it at the end. You do get marks, I think, for showing the difference. So I will do there, I have a box to show the difference between the BD and the CD. And that means I should meet all the marks for that. I have a profit thing ready to go. So that's B done. And I'm able to say to them with really very little thinking, well, you've just got yourself 6 out of 6 for that. You know, for being able to highlight and transfer the numbers out of your journal into your suspense account and not even knowing that much about what you're doing, you still got 6 out of 6. For being able to highlight all the trading profit and loss figures and transfer them in here, they're going to get 14 out of 14. Okay, and if I jump back up to this, and we know this, but they don't, every profit and loss highlighted item on that side is going to make the profit go down. So, you know, if it says purchases and the figure's there, it's going down. If it says sales and the figure's there, it's going down. It doesn't matter. We don't have to be thinking about should that be going up or down. It's in the left column and it's a trade item, so the profit is being reduced. So they simply work their way down that left column, transferring all the highlighted trading profit and loss highlighted items into this stack here. No thinking, as long as they were able to identify it as a trading profit and loss item, they're transferring everything in easily here. Okay. Different people use different things to help you to remember which should be the plus or profit side. What I actually do is I treat it like a sales and purchases account. What side of sales you always use? The right hand side. What does sales do to profit? It makes it go up. Okay, so that's the up side. And that's fairly straightforward. So now you're able to say, okay, I can pull up the marking scheme and say, you just got part C right. You've just got another 14 marks. Okay, so you've got, this is almost on, this can be done day one. So I can be doing this on day one with the class, and they've now got 20 out of 100 so far. And then we come down to the balance sheet, and I've got a balance sheet pre-printed for them here. And I'll admit to them, I will tell them the balance sheet will be a bit more difficult because you've got all your figures highlighted for the balance sheet. And I always use yellow. It just means I always think yellow for balance sheet all the time. So when I start talking now about yellow, it's because I always use yellow for the balance sheet. And they go down the left column, and it is a two-step thing. So asset or liability, so plus or minus. So asset or liability, so plus or minus. Excuse me. And it's very easy for them to transfer in. All right. Now, there might be an awkward entry, but the chances are that on day one or day two, we're able to say, well, you've got 18 out of 20, or maybe 20 out of 20 for that balance sheet. All right. So there they've got the guts of, not necessarily all, but the guts of the 20 and the 14 and the 6. They've got 40 out of the 100 marks very easily, with very little suffering going on. Okay. Now, the theory I won't look at. I would point out that the suspense is probably the easiest theory there is in any question. There is such a narrow range of questions that have traditionally been asked. Errors that do or don't affect the trial balance, difference between an error of principle and an error of commission. I think there was one other one, error of commission and error of omission. But so often it's the principle and commission one, real easy, real straightforward. It can be done really easy. And we're able to get them at this stage to say, well, if we can actually start getting you decent on part A, you could do really well on this question. Okay, I have 4 of those there, which is that I've shared with you. Here's the irony. It doesn't actually matter which method you use for your journal, because all you're doing is highlighting the stuff here anyway, and you're never going to be going back and taking this. So all we're saying is, look, we did stuff here that created a journal, and if you can highlight it, and I know I'm a bit pedantic with my highlighters, I use all 3 colors so that nothing gets left behind. But you'll find that there's only a couple of things in there that most people struggle with to discover. Is it a trading profit and loss? Is it a trading profit and loss item, or is it a balance sheet item? Things like the 15 months payment one, So if it's only 1 or 2 things that do it, they're willing to take it on. But it means when I go back to start part A, they're really willing to give it a go. And I do beef up, oh, this is so hard, oh, this question is so hard, or you're never going to be able to do it, or this question is pure torment. This is sense of humor for accounting teachers. We just love to watch you suffer. Let's start suffering. But they're willing to take it on because they've seen that the stuff after it is not so bad. Okay. So let me put that out of the way for a moment and bring up this. Okay, I'm just going to where do I include suspense? Because suspense is this, I'm not really good at doing a topic and a topic and a topic. I would be doing bits of question 1, and I'll suddenly take a class and do 1 or 2 things out of suspense that are not dissimilar to what we're doing. So I can go off and I'll do a couple of purchases or a purchase return. And it might be similar to something that's happening in question 1. It never really works for me if I just take suspense and do it from beginning to end. Like, I couldn't do it. I'd have to kind of do bits and come back and do. But I would always do some suspense in 5th year, and then come back to it in 6th year. I know there's a new name for it now. When I was on my dip, we were told nobody learns anything till they've done it 3 times, and I have to say, being an oldie, I really do believe that. So if I can do it with them early and sometime in 5th year, and then again later in 6th year, come back to it again, I think that idea of 3 times is really, really helpful. Okay, so I'm bringing up. Let me just find which Okay, so this is my suspense stuff right here, right? So I put this up yesterday, okay, last night, and this is the thing that's new. And this is called original in the PowerPoint is called original, and it's included in the folder. Okay. So, right. So what it does is it concentrates only on the first part, the part that should have been recorded. It pretty much ignores what was recorded, but you can come back, you could include it yourself if we take a look. This is important. I'm hoping you can see there's a little play. So these are like a series of mini videos. All right, so the play is in this lower left-hand corner. You can go back to the home thing with the house slide. You advance to the next adjustment using that there. So if I go on to the next one, here are my 7 general headings. All right, and each one is a link. So if I click on one, so these are the standard double entry errors. Okay, a usually straightforward transaction has been entered as a wrong figure and or in a wrong account and or on a wrong side. Put that in there because there's a wording issue in relation to the 2018 part 2 and the 2012 part 1. And the reason I'm mentioning that is, as you probably know, there's a questions thing on the website, and a lot of the questions come from young teachers, and a question I've got a few times is, why are those 2 questions treated differently? And I have no idea why, except that they are. And as a consequence, I don't think we'll see 2012 again. I think we will see the like of 2018 again. We've got the key terms that they need to understand, something being entered in the daybook or the daybook, the book or the daybook. I think they started using the word daybook in 2016. The idea of posting, the meaning of debited and credited, the meaning of credit note, the significance of a credit note received versus a credit note sent, and the concept of a restocking or a transport charge. Okay, so when it comes up, I'm going to move something that you may not be able to see. Okay, right. So I have it up here. Coffee tables purchased on credit for 2,800. So I'm copying the question out from the exam, but I'm highlighting on keywords. I'm putting a single line through the mistake so that, because I want to ignore that, I've got the question item number there. I have this on everything, so you may not like this, which is fair enough. But it's the 4 bits of the year. The start of the year, assets are brought down and carried down. So if it's an asset, it should be a BD. Bank is RIP, receipts and payments. If it's a person, it should start on the left side, and if it's credited, double entries to a person. Dactyl is debtors or assets, creditors or liabilities. So when I clicked that, the video played, and up came the transaction that should have been recorded. All right, so it's a purchase on credit. The dot is the account they should know. So we're saying we expect you to know that purchases is always on the left, and that it's on credit means it goes to the people on the other side. And that's all it is, okay? So all I'm asking them to do is to concentrate on learning and how to write up what should have happened. If I click, it goes straight into the next one. The mouse appeared, which means the video is paused until I click play. And we go, right, it's credit note, what does that mean? And it was sent, what does that mean? Okay, so, a credit note means returns. It was sent means with sales. So it's sales returns to a debtor. And again, I've crossed out all the error. So we can just, instead of concentrating on 5 tasks, I'm concentrating on 1. Okay. And if we click play, and you'll see everything is set to run really, really slowly to give people time to actually go through with it. Now, I've left them blanks there, so if anybody ever wanted to use it, there's nothing to say, right, we can go off and put in the rest. It can still be done with that because it can be read on a board because a single line through it doesn't actually block it out that much. If I go to the next one, it's another sale return. Bedside lockers previously sold have been returned. So when we click play, the same thing comes through. They should know sales returns. They should know the side of sales returns. They should know it's on credit, so it's people, meaning debtors. Okay. There's the big long one with the credit return. I'm just going to go straight to that one. And here is the one with the star on it. A garage owner, private car valued at 10,000 was presented to the business. No entry was made in the books regarding this transaction. All right, that's the new line that differs it from 2012. This car was later sold on credit to a debtor. Okay, and we can play it through, and like so. Okay, so they should know it's capital. And then there's, if I jump down to here, so these are the disposal of assets involving depreciation. And I've done something a bit different here, which some people may not like. Some people in my class don't like it, but I needed to find a way to try and put a consistency in that I felt was lacking. So we're getting rid of an asset. Maybe it's a trade-in, maybe it's for cash, and maybe it's a payment to someone. So this is the one where a creditor takes an asset in payment. Either way, we're making a profit or a loss in the process. Okay, so what I've done, which I think is new, so a delivery van which cost 2.4, a book value of 1.5 was sold for cash 13.50. And the rest, and the error is crossed out. So they should know how to get it out of the van at cost. And I'm using a disposal account for everything here. All right. So the same as question one, get it out of cost, get the depreciation out, put it in here. Receive the cash as part of the process of disposal, and then do a profit and loss account with expenses and revenues, see if we made a profit, and it's a P and L, which means it's a loss or an expense, and then this just crosses out and disappears away altogether, and this is what we're left with for doing the for the journal. Okay, and did it because it seemed to be very random the way sometimes we were profit, and it wasn't always clear to people. The second one, we received 1,400 from the sale of an old display, but runs in the same way, just running it through a disposal account to try and find a consistent way of dealing with it. Take it out, and in this case, what's different about this one is that there's no cost versus depreciation figure. So we get it into a disposal, we receive the money for it, we close it off, and we see in this case we made a profit on the disposal, and then the disposal account ceases to exist, and the journal is those 3 entries there. Okay, I'm moving on because I want to take a look at a particular one. This is 3A. And the reason I'm doing this, and this occurred in this year's mock, a creditor who was owed 5.5 by Beglan accepted equipment, the book value of which was 5.2. So the book value was 5.2, the equipment had cost 6.8. So we have a cost figure, we have a book value, which means we can find the depreciation figure, and the same approach, we get the cost out of equipment and into a disposal. We work out depreciation, and we get it out and into a disposal. The creditor receives from the disposal, and in this case, the creditor's bill is coming down by 5.5, so we can have a discount. All right, and the discount is there, and the disposal ceases to exist, it disappears. And we have, and so it happened this year's mock, one of the mocks, fairly straightforward, and we discount. But the reason I put in a part B is because the same thing can be done in a slightly different way, and both appeared in the mock paper. I think it was the exam craft. And if I just run through it, okay, again, same thing's happening. Take the cost to a disposal, take the depreciation to a disposal. But this time, putting the full amount that the creditor is coming down by, not the 5.2, the full 5.5, and writing it up as a profit on disposal of 300, and it works out exactly the same either way. but you could look at a solution and you could see a different wording. You could see profit on disposal, or you could see discount, and it would be the same thing. Okay. And then just to take a look at one last one. Basically, you got the idea. They're all working something similar. If I jump down to the private debt offset by the public debt, it was a student pointed out this. So I have a little animation, and I have the debt, and the debt is either owed by the owner or it is owed to the owner, involving someone, and that person we don't know yet will be a debtor or a creditor. But the student pointed out, Derek Stevenson actually pointed it out, so I'm giving him the credit. If it's drawings, it's debtors. But if it's capital, it's creditors. And DDCC works quite well for some of them. So private debt owed to the owner has been offset against the business debt. So I don't show a movement of payment, I show a movement of debt. So there is the owner, there is the business, and there is the someone. The debt is owed to the owner. And if we follow that around and create a circle of it, the arrow moves this way from the owner to the business, which is the capital movement. And DDCC means if it's capital, it's creditors. And I have a mouse again, so I need to pause it a second time and say, right, the debt down this way, that's capital. So they need to know capital. They should know the side of capital. So we've got capital for the private, we've got creditors for the business, and we've got discount for the difference. Okay, and that is that. Okay, so it's all done with PowerPoint and animations. It could be put up on the board. You could write the errors in there if you wanted to, if you kind of wanted to have, you know, if they were good at this, you could move on to the next step. But it's up on the, it's up there as everything on the Suspense page. Okay. The last thing on Suspense is this handout too. My videos are, sorry, they're pretty rubbish at this stage. I will probably get rid of them. This handout here, which doesn't look very friendly to start with, but is, okay, I'm right down the bottom. Let's go to the top. So 7-page handout at this stage. 7-page, not a handout. The first full page is a page of terminology. So books, day books, credited, debited, cash versus cash book, debtors, creditors, suppliers. This, okay, just the things we are straightforward that we know them. This is just kind of a theoretical breakdown of them all, right? No use to students whatsoever, but okay for teachers. This is the list of all the omissions, one of every single one of them. And this is a 2-page, 3-page at this stage, list of one of every single thing that has been asked in 30 years. So if a student wanted to use it to tick it off, they could put a smiley face or a grumpy face, and they can use it to identify which are the easy ones, which are the hard ones, which are the ones they don't want to touch. Okay, so what I'm doing first is to try and make maybe 17 or 18 or 19 even of those 22, 23 items easy for people to do, as opposed to starting into an infinite list of difficult adjustments and not knowing what the hell to do with them. Okay, so any questions at this stage before we kind of leave that and take no, it doesn't seem to be any questions there on the list. Okay. Oh yeah, one last thing to show you then for that. If you like this, you're going to like this. If you don't like this, you're not. Now, isn't that a fantastic statement for anybody to make? Okay, these presentations here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those 9 have been given to you as the actual PowerPoints, but if you do them here, All right, so each of these is the actual question. All right, for that particular year, there's a link to each of the 5 parts. If I just click the first one, okay, here are the 5 transactions. So if I click the first, again, they are all just hyperlinks. If I click the first one, okay, it's a kind of more complete version of the other thing. So if nothing is crossed out, equipment purchased on credit from BAB has been entered on the incorrect side of BAB's account and credited. So when I click play into the first corner, the first thing it will do is put up the right thing, the correct thing. So equipment purchased, so it's equipment, we should know that. It was purchased on credit from BAB, all right? And that's what should have been recorded. And it stops, and this flashed again. And I click play a second time. And what will come up this time is it was entered on the incorrect side of the creditor's account as the wrong figure and credited as 66 in the purchase account. So I can do it on the whiteboard, and it gives chance to students to run ahead of it. And it's in one way, it's no different to me writing it up, but it means I don't have to be rubbing out everything when I move on to the next transaction. You know, it makes it a little bit easier for that. Okay, so that's the correct. That's task 1, the correct. There's task 2, the incorrect. Task 3 of our 5, fix it. Okay, I'm going to do that using the wipe out and start again method. So I'm going to need the suspense, get rid of the 6 with the 6 to suspense, get rid of the 60-60 with the 60-60 to suspense. Okay, all right. So that's how I've wiped everything back to a clean slate. Now it's time, task number 4, write up my journal. So first of all, I put a 6,000 in purchases on the left. I put a 60-60 in credit on the right, and I put 2 entries into suspense. Okay, and it pauses again because what do I do next? They're the journal entries I used to wipe it out, and now it's time to start again. How do I start again? I put a 600 into equipment on the left, and I put a 6600 into creditors. Okay, thing flashes again. What have I still to do? I have to put my being correction of, and then I have to highlight everything for the balance sheet or for the trading profit and loss or for the suspense. Now, in reality, I would do that at the very end, but I'm identifying where everything should end up in my final answer. Okay, it will go through all 5 transactions like that. Sorry, I should use outline. So at the end of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's my 5 transactions. Okay, now it's time for, so the next thing I do is I'll be using the whiteboard to do this. I'm going to do part B, the suspense. Okay. All right, and this comes up and tells me that the debtors incorporating suspense was 66,300. I'll need that for later. I click through that. And up on the whiteboard, it'll come in 2 screens. Right, I can put in my starting figure, the 66,300. What entries do I have to put in? Well, I get the new whiteboard marker out and I write in 6060 and 6,000. That is transaction number 1. Double entry against creditors, 6060. Still transaction number 1. Double entry against purchases and 6,000. Is there anything else there for the suspense? No, it's really easy to see. Just move it on. Because this is on a whiteboard, my whiteboard marker writing is still there. All right, is there anything else there for suspense? There clearly is at 3,500. Okay, so this is transaction number 4, 3,500. What it's against? It's against creditors and insurance and repairs or whatever. All right, and I click on, again, my handwriting, is there anything there for suspense? Okay, time to close it off. Really easy for people to close off. What's the difference between the BD and the CD? I've got myself my original difference. Take note of that. I'm going to need it for the balance sheet. Move into part C. Time to adjust the profit. Okay, what's the profit? It's 42,700, right? 42,700. Okay, so we're starting with 42,700. Go down the left column. Is there anything there changing profit? Well, you know, I don't even need to read the words. There's a 6 and there's a 1,600. Okay, is there anything on the right changing profit? Yeah, there's a 300. So down by 6,000 down. So I'm going down to here. Transaction number 1, purchases 6,000. Transaction number 2, depreciation 1,600. Transaction number 2, profit and loss 300. And they're written up there in my whiteboard marker. And I come here. All right. transaction number 4, insurance 750, transaction number 4, repairs 1,000, transaction number 3, discount 160. Extraordinarily easy and straightforward. And even if the figures are wrong from the previous thing, I'm still getting full marks because I'm transferring them in, bar the possible bonus. But I'm still transferring everything in properly and correctly from the previous thing. All right, I'm going to do this real fast. So there's the 5th one. I can rub them out. Now I have the new profit. Time to do the balance sheet. Just goes through it exactly the same thing again. Sorry, I clicked there. Just goes through exactly the same thing again. All right, the yellow figures this time, except, and I go down, you know, asset or liabilities, plus or minus, right, plus 600. Asset or liabilities, plus or minus, minus 55. All right, asset or liability, so plus or minus, liability, so plus. Asset or liability, plus or minus, liability, plus. Asset minus, and it's really easy, and they just go through and they're transferring everything in, and I've got one of those for each of all the questions. All right, and you could do it with the class if you wanted to, but a student could do it for revision themselves if they wanted to. Okay, so let me just take off the and as I said, the PowerPoints for them are done at, if there's somebody out there likes the idea of it and wants to use the other method, they can take the PowerPoint and they can fiddle with it and change it, and you know, change numbers and change the animations and stuff and make their own version of it. Okay. Alrighty, so that's the new stuff we put up for Suspense. I hope there's something there that somebody finds useful. Okay. How are we for time? 10 to. Okay, I think we're doing okay. Just checking. There's a. What does DACL stand for? DACL stands for debtors or assets, creditors or liabilities. This is DACL. This is DACL. All right. He was knitted by for me. It was a student who went on to do animation. I was a form teacher. I'll bring him right in because he is seriously beautiful. All right. It's me but thinner. All right, with better hair. So normally he'd be in the classroom, and every time we have a question about credit or people, we just ask DACL. Okay. We've had some unusual names in our school, so the idea of having a weird name doesn't bother anybody. So I just keep going. Look, you know, it says I said it was on credit to a person. I said, okay, does it say if the person's a debtor or a creditor? And they say it's a debtor. So ask DACL, and it just becomes really quick and really, really easy for people. They just get used to really, really quickly. You know, because nearly every question says if the person's a debtor or a creditor. All right, and I know you do get to a point where you have to kind of go sales, that's to a debtor. You have to learn it, but most of the time it's quite explicit whether you know, particularly in Suspense, it's a supplier. It's nearly always a supplier. So you know the supplier is a creditor, and that means you treat them like a liability, and it works out really easy for them. Okay. Okay, so where am I now? Okay, so this is the cash. Are we okay if I do the cash budgeting?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And you can still see my screen, okay?
Yeah, it's just perfect. Yeah.
Grand. Okay, so these are the cash budgeting exercises, which I have completely revamped because I felt there was a couple of big weaknesses in them. All right. This is so if I pull up, I'm not going to do one of these because it'll bore to bore you with this. So if I open up these now, all right. So at the start of every page, it reminds us that while this question is from 2012, a cash budget is always being done for next year. All right, because that question, you know yourselves, has to be driven home again and again and again. They really lose the notion of it as a future figures exercise. This thing here comes up at the start of every question, and if the student is doing it as a homework, if they put the teacher's email in there, it's automatically sent to the teacher and is automatically corrected. They need to put their name there and their student email address there. That allows you to reply to them if you want to, because the email gets handled by a system, so it doesn't technically come from the student, but that there will identify the student's email address and the student's name, and it will come to you, and the vast majority of it is auto-corrected. Okay. If they don't want to do it, it's left a send. It can't be blank, so we've made it's filled in as nobody@nowhere.never. So it's going to get sent to nobody@nowhere.never. I really doubt that exists, and if it does, they really must hate me at this stage anyway. All right, it's coming from student, and the student email default is student@nowhere.never. So obviously such a thing doesn't exist, but I can click it and it goes in. There's some information about the type of formats I can use beyond once. And what I've done is I've put the information for a bit of the question up on top, and I've highlighted in a different color key important bits that are easily the bits that they need to pick up on. I've also changed the color of the purchases line to the sales line, because while they have to deal with it all in black and white on paper, on a screen it can be quite easy to make a mistake reading the line. All right, and I didn't want to do anything that gave them the information on how to do it, but I wanted to point out the bits and pieces that were important in the process of doing it. I've also changed that it's only one line at a time comes here. All right, so that if they make a mistake, there isn't like 15 boxes filled in and they're trying to figure out which of the 15 boxes. I wanted them to kind of get a stop point at lots of stop points along the way to make sure that we're doing it. Now, I'll be honest with you, this can make students worse. All right, I think it's really important when they're doing, especially if you get them to do it in class, that they talk out loud what they're trying to do. All right, as opposed to just doing it without thinking what they're doing. Okay, so they need, and another thing that works really well is if you got two students doing it together, and one of them is doing it on paper and the other is doing it on the screen. All right, because what the screen is designed to do is give them 2 attempts on each question and a confirmation that they're right. So it's kind of like a security blanket that they're going okay. So I'm not going to fill in much of this question, but I'm going to fill in a bit of this one so we can see what we're doing. Right, so it's 40% of for immediate cash with a 5% discount. So I'm just going to work out, and so I'm coming down here, 1 multiplied by 0.40 multiplied by 0.95. All right, that gives me, so it's 38%. So I'm going to do is put in here, I'm going to put it there, 0.38 multiplied by 0.38. Okay, I'm doing that for a reason. Okay, so let me just click on that for a minute. Okay, so I'm going to put in 520, not. So that's going to be 197, 197,600. Oops, that's where it is, sorry. 197,600. Let me just click this in. Okay, and the next number is 540, so 540, 197,600. Okay, that's fine. 54, I'm putting this again just to be sure. 520, no, it's not. 197,600. 540, no. 205, 200. The next number is 610. 231, 800. The next number is 630. 239, 400. The next number is 640. 243, 200. Okay, and now I'm going to make a deliberate mistake, unless I've already made an accidental mistake. 660, no. 250, 800. Okay, so 250, 250, 000. Okay, and I'm going to go submit, and it comes up, and it gives me a way, some information about working it out, and it gives me another attempt to do it. So I'm going to try again, and I go through it now. That should be an 800, and I get the green thing that confirms I'm okay, and I can move on to the next one. All right, so it's just a practice, just a drill and practice exercise without you, because you know the way if you do this question and you give it to them on a Friday and you get it back the next Wednesday, and you go off something, it's 6 days later and you correct it and you give it back and you've got some figures highlighted and they couldn't care less that it's wrong. All right. At least with this, if they get it wrong, they're getting the feedback straight away, and they're getting a second opportunity to try and find out what they're doing wrong. And what they do wrong nearly all the time is clumsy fingers on calculators. You know, they're often really good at, in terms of method. I'm just going to click submit. That's wrong. Okay, I'm going to go through this because I want to get on to a particular one. It always goes through the order. These are in here because they just need practice doing the sums. You know, they don't like doing the sums, and they make stupid mistakes doing the sums, and we just need to force them to do them. And also they get a silly notion that they can do the sums quicker because they sometimes don't bother doing the sums. Okay, going through these. You see that big gap there? Apple. I hate Apple. That is because iPads render it completely different and they shrink that gap. So the gap is huge on everything except on iPads, and that gap, this stuff gets showed right up there. And that's the best I could do in terms of dealing with it. Okay, there's working out what the depreciation is per month. Let me just work out where that. So 54000, 5 years. Okay, so it's 900 a month. So depreciation is going to be 900 a month. I've just worked that out, but you know this is not in a cash budget. Now look at the next line. Fixed overheads. All right, 50,000 less the 900 should be 49,100.
So 60,000.
Say again.
60,000 that are fixed overheads.
Oh, okay.
So
would you? You're good on you for that. Would anybody believe me if I actually tried to claim that that was a deliberate on purpose mistake? Of course not. Okay, so 59,100. Thank you for that. Now, that's the type of mistake I make all the time. Now, what's this doing here? Okay, because we know it shouldn't go in here because it's non-cash expense. Except if I leave it out, I'm not giving the students the opportunity to decide whether to put it in or not. I'm leading them down the path. They're not learning anything because I've actually kind of told them to not put it here. So I've put the fixed overhead there, and I've put the depreciation, and what they have to do is kind of go, well, look, I've just worked out the fixed overhead. I've taken out the depreciation. I should put in the fixed overhead, but I should not be putting in the depreciation. All right. I'm forcing them to actually question themselves about it. And then when it comes to the next line, the same thing. The equipment cost 54. It was in July, so it's 54 in July. There was nothing spent on any of the months, and I don't show the depreciation here either. So again, what they have to kind of go, okay, show it in July, don't show the depreciation. Okay. And then there's the loan repayments. I'll just go through them because I don't want to do it. And again, more just sums practice, 2 attempts on everything. Okay, there's the bank loan, and again, lots and lots of calculation practice. And again, we find they make lots of silly mistakes here. All right. The sales figure is given in the question. The purchases figure is given in the question. I can just do the subtraction and I find gross profit. It's not laid out like that in the marking schemes, but there's no reason it can't be because it does ask for a budgeted trading profit and loss. So there's the budgeted trading. And then I go literally to, and I put, just change the colors. All of these are the figures from the previous things, and it gives them a chance to go through them. Most of them are fairly straightforward. They'll probably have difficulty with the discount allowed and the discount received, but even if they just get down to the point where they're working out those ones, and then finally they work out the interest. And then there's the theory questions, and the theory questions can't be graded because you can't deal with their wording, but everything else will get graded. So I'm just gonna, and these are just review questions. They can put in the things they're inclined to do, and they can submit. And there's another theory question, and they can just put in stuff in there, and they submit it. All right, and at the end, don't click finish or it's gone, but they can review it and they can go through it. And then if I come over to here and I come into my inbox updates, here's one I did earlier. All right, so this is what's coming to me. So on that one, I was a bit more careful. I can see that I did this. My student name was Limerick BSTI 25th of the 4th, 2022. My score is 100%. All right. The green, this is not worth reading, but the green things show where the figures are right. It would show up in orange or red if they were wrong. And if I want to read the theory that was answered, I can scroll down to it. And there's the theory that points that were made. But the whole thing is, I can see what the students got. They got 100%. You don't have to read it exactly. I mean, if they're getting 98 or something, you know that they're good. It was done in at 12 minutes 19, and it's capped out at a half an hour. We designed it to make sure that students couldn't spend hours and hours and hours doing it, because some of them are just getting, some of the more obsessive ones could just get caught into it. And I didn't want to be coming out. Somebody came home and it had taken them 3 hours, and said it wasn't happening again. Okay, so we've put those, where are they gone? Sorry, yes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those they can do. Handy for a revision, a student can do it as a revision themselves if they want to. Handy revision in pairs, one can do it on the computer, one can be doing the paper version. The person on the computer is seeing the paper version being put together, but they're still getting a kind of a check that they're not, and if they make a mistake, they're finding the mistake all the way through it. Okay, and that is the 2 things that we've got done for people. Okay, oh yeah, at the end of, sorry, wrong one, excuse me. If I come, I'm just going to close that cash budgeting and go back. Cash budgets, go back to here, suspense. Yeah, at the end of, on this one, in the outline, the very last one is that, and each of these links back to its own particular question. So you can use it to check off that everything has been done. Okay. And that's, I think that's everything really. I hope there's there something that people will find useful, and we're not holding people too long. Okay. Does anybody have any kind of questions on anything we've done there?
I can't see any new questions that have come in, but if anyone has any other questions that they want to ask, I'm just going to quickly again put the link in for those resources into the chat and for the certificate of attendance, just in case anyone came in late.
Yeah,
and thanks
I
so much, Michael.
I was gobsmacked when I saw that there was only about 22, 23 of the types of error have occurred in, when I went back, because I actually have some really old papers, and I went back to 1992, and I said 30 years is a long time, and I think it gives us kind of hope that if there's a limited number of errors, we can learn to deal with them.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And your resources are fantastic. I think there's so much for people to work with there. Really appreciate it. So much work has gone into these, and a lot of these are new as well. So you've put in a lot of work on these.
Well, you're kind of trying to, you what happens is you put them out, and then you find out what doesn't work for people. Like I said, the cash budgets were not working as well as I hope. The production budgets still don't work as well as I hope, but I haven't figured out any way to try and make them better yet. But I think hopefully that suspense thing particularly, that has worked quite well with me. Now at the same time, they all want to do question 5 this year, but it did make their level of success. Like, then several of them did it in their mock paper. And they were doing better suspense questions than the classes I would have had before. Even though I've always left part A in a way till near the end, the idea of kind of having a limited number of those, that 20, and as they start knocking off the easy ones, and it did cheer them up a lot. It did really transform the mentality of the group to the question.
Suspense can be something that the kids themselves even hate the thoughts of. And I think a lot of us as well.
I think a lot of teachers never like suspense, and I know most, but I think suspense is a horrible question for young teachers, because there's lots of things, and I'd reassure if there's any young teachers watching here, I would reassure you that those of us who've been teaching a long time were always able to do the suspense once the marking scheme came out and we were able to read what it was they actually wanted, and not necessarily beforehand. You know, sometimes you're looking and you kind of go, it could mean this and it could mean that, you know. And even things like that, when I referenced the 2012 new vehicle one versus the 2018. And it's also worth pointing out that, and I don't correct, so you have to take that into account, but I've been told many times that there may be two answers that were acceptable and both were considered to be correct. Like, for example, the giving the asset to the creditor. Is it a discount or is it a profit on disposal? But a marking scheme will only ever show one. The marking scheme they print will show one solution that was considered correct. And there can be other solutions that were considered correct, but they're not the one that show. And when you're starting off, it's very difficult sometimes to know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, kind of can be very overwhelming. But your resources, they are, and everything on your website is really, it's a great help. So thanks so much. I think everyone here tonight appreciates it. I know your website has been a lifesaver for me since my own leaving cert. So it's been great.
Thank you very much. Okay,
has anyone questions there before we finish? Anything at all?
I don't know whether you can answer this now, Michael. I'm just working on the cash budgets now, my guys, and I've just realized, is it okay? Like, I mean, flexible came up last year, but in terms of time, I don't think we'll get it done. But I'm just worked on the cash budgets only, then cash budgets plus production budgets together, and then production on its own on that side. Would that be enough, you reckon? Would be all right on that side? The three different types, you know.
I'm going to answer that vaguely because nobody is ever in a position to turn around and go, yes, it is, if you're leaving something out, right? But I think don't worry unnecessarily. You know, flexible did come up last year. Theoretically, flexible could come up this year, and I would be very, very surprised if it did. However, it's not the only consideration you have to take. We also have to take into account we've only got about 5 weeks left. You know, so it's very easy. It's very easy for me to sort of like do a Pontius Pilate and wash my hands off it and say, I won't be giving flexible budget a lot of time. All right. If flexible budget was to come up, my class would not be happy. All right. They're not the strongest group, but I also have to consider that if I do a week or whatever of flexible budgeting, it will be at the cost of something else. And there's no way I can avoid that because I don't have like time left. And even things like we've got this full week, next week is a short week. I think we've got 2 weeks, and then possibly your 6 years might be finishing up.
Well, that's it. No, I just really only have production left to do. So, and I said I did question one with them then at the end. So I just think confuse them all together. We'll start bringing in flexible at the end.
Flexible is a funny one. You'd often tell people flexible is a really nice question, and for about 3 classes they look at you like there's something wrong with you. And if you got, you know, it takes a few classes before flexible becomes okay. So I can't, and I know it sounds like I'm ready to become a politician here. I'd give it a double class at most, and if they get it, they get it. But at least if the worst happened, they'd be able to make a stab at it. But I can't see how we have the time to do everything the way we want to do it in the time that we've left.
Well, I'm a new teacher and I find it really hard, especially with I started a new year with 5th years, and I just found it really hard to get the covering, and I just felt if I went ahead and left it, they would be lost. I just felt like more comfortable knowing at least something.
I get people talking to me because the website has the questions on it, and not all the stuff that comes in is a question that people want me to put a public response to. So people say things to me, all right, and possibly the fact that I don't correct means there's a license to come in there too. A lot of people are saying to me that they're really struggling with their 5th years.
Yeah, I find the junior cert, I think, the change.
So yeah, now in my school we have a funny sort of thing. We alternate. There's myself and another lad, and we both love the accounting. So I have the present 6th year accounting and the present 4th year accounting, and I will take the 4th year group through. But a good few people, and I'm lucky enough to have accounting put in as a compulsory module in TY, and I have a whole load of stuff built for double entry in accounting in TY. But that's grand because I get everybody to do it whether they want to or not, and then they can award. But even with that, I'm basically starting trading profits from day one, pure type standards.
Okay.
They've done none of that kind of like. Normally, you can do plenty of stuff. The people coming through, they don't know it as well as the other crowd knew it. And I also loved the old paper 2 question 1, but I remember going up to a couple of the BSTI revision seminars for students in Dublin, and I'd say only about 1/3 of the pupils did that paper 2 question 1. It was quite shocking.
Okay.
So that blew me away now. But yeah, look, and it's great when you're a young teacher to suffer because you think it's because you're a young teacher. All right. I would have exactly the same issues, and I'm an old teacher with plenty of years, so I wouldn't be worried about that. And I think it's really important that we kind of do a lot of reaching out to each other, because I did a bit of work with PMEs a couple of years ago, and I'm sorry for dragging everybody on, but an awful lot of PMEs, and there's nothing wrong with them for this, but a lot of PMEs come out and they've done nothing like accounting, nothing like Leaving Cert accounting in their college courses. So they're as often as always new teachers, they're learning it the night before. All right, and it's not like Leaving Cert business, where you've got a list of 5 things to learn and you can sneak it onto a piece of paper and you can sneak it out of the corner of your eye and go, the next thing on the list is, all right. They're going home and there's nearly always a figure somewhere in the accounting market schemes, and you're looking at it and tearing your hair going, I have no idea where that figure is coming from. All right, I have to go into this class tomorrow and I do not know where that figure.
I correct the papers and I find it just so much easier. It just helps me so much with correcting the papers. I corrected them last year and I'm correcting them again this year, but I recommend to any teacher, and you give so many good tips for the kids to know where they can gain the best points as well.